So I ordered this hand-sewn steering wheel cover by Yeolpise from Amazon. Comes with the instructions, the steering wheel cover, some double-sided tape, needle, and some sewing threads. We're going to wrap this around the steering wheel, and then we are going to hand sew this. According to the instructions, these flaps right here are what is in the front. The divots, the holes right here are on the side, and this smooth surface is on top. Our next set of instructions is we want to adjust the position and make sure that the gap between each part of the leather should be about 2 millimeters. So checking this all around, this gap is not centered appropriately, so I need to readjust it a bit. Once you have everything in position as best as possible, now we can fix the double-sided tape to secure the leather positioning. So I'm basically sticking the double-sided tape where I believe the two leather sides should match up. And I'm also being careful to ensure that when I put the tape on, it's as flush as possible on the steering wheel so that there won't be any bulges after sewing. Don't forget to do the back side of the steering wheel. I think I have most of this in place. Now the hard part, taking off. This double-sided tape is pretty hard to get off. So this is where I recommend getting some type of tweezer. And with the tweezer, it should be a little bit easier to take off, but a lot easier with my stubby fingernails would be a lot worse. So now that the double-sided tape is stuck all around the wheel, we're going to use this plugging knife to plug the loose ends of the leather inside of the steering wheel gaps. Use this pry bar to tuck in the steering wheel cover. And you see right here, there's this gap where it still has yet to go in. You want to basically follow along and tuck it in on the side until you get it in. So usually you start off at the very end, and now you can see this leather is getting tucked into the edges. So you keep on doing this until you get it all the way through. So a tip when you're working, you're gonna have to work on the back a couple of times. And if you're like me and you don't take off the steering wheel, you definitely want more room. So don't forget that you have this tab right here that you could pull up the steering wheel, and this will give you more room to work in the back. Okay, you can see it's tucked pretty nicely. This is the front and the back. So once this is done, we're going to move on to our next step. So now we get our thread. With this pack, we either have the red thread or the black one. I'm going to choose the black one. We have 3 sections that need to be sewn. We need to measure the length of the thread, and then we need to reserve 4 times that length. Measure the length of this section right here, and then times that by 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and just a little extra. I'm going to pull it back a bit, snip it, thread this needle. The method that I'm going to use to sew this is I'm going to start at the center, stitch this through, then I can begin sewing. I'll sew to the right first, then after that is completed, sew to the left. So here is how I'm choosing to sew it. So basically, I want to make sure I'm coming in from the outside. So outside this thread, I'm pulling it out. And then when I pull it through, I want to make sure my next one I'm also going around the outside as well. Pulling it through. Then tightening it. The next one, I'm pulling it from the outside loop here, underneath. Pulling it, and then also running it through outside over here. Pulling it through. Once we are at the end, we are going to tie a knot so the stitches don't come loose, and then tuck in the leftover string and leather. Alright, this side complete. Now we switch the needle to the other side and then start sewing the other direction. Basically, we now just repeat the sewing and tucking on the rest of the sections. You can see that I picked up a flashlight because it was dark and difficult to sew. So I recommend a flashlight or being in a well-lit area. My last recommendation is working with the top part of the steering wheel. I basically turned the steering wheel to the bottom to make it easier to work with. However, you of course have the option to remove the steering wheel and install the cover that way, which I imagine would be so much easier. All right, new steering wheel cover in. It feels so good. Very nice, hand sewn. Well worth it. Would highly recommend.